"If anything happens to your niece, that'll be on you," my dad said after I refused to be a free nanny, so I left them behind. A week later, Dad called me. I'm 28, female, and a pediatric nurse at one of the busiest children's hospitals in our city. The irony of caring for sick children all day while being pressured to give up my career to care for my niece isn't lost on me. I grew up in a family that's always put an enormous amount of pressure on me, especially since I'm the responsible one, a label that's been both a blessing and a curse. My parents have never quite understood or accepted that I might want something different for myself. Every achievement in my career has been met with barely concealed disappointment, always followed by questions about when I'm going to settle down and start a real life. My sister Janice, who's 31 now, had her daughter Denise when she was 24. She's always been the golden child, the one who could do no wrong in our parents' eyes. Even having a child young and unmarried didn't tarnish her status. If anything, it elevated her further in their eyes because she was embracing motherhood. While they were throwing money and support at Janice, helping her with everything from rent to childcare, I was largely left to fend for myself. The babysitting started almost immediately after Denise was born. At first, it was just occasional evenings when Janice wanted to go out. Then it became every weekend. Before I knew it, I was expected to be available whenever Janice needed me, regardless of my own plans or commitments. During my nursing school years, I'd often find myself studying late into the night because my days were filled with watching Denise. I remember one particular incident during my final year of nursing school. I had a crucial exam the next day, but Janice showed up unannounced at my apartment at 7 p.m., Denise in tow, saying she had a date and couldn't find anyone else. When I tried to say no, she immediately called our parents, who spent the next hour berating me about family responsibility and how I was being selfish. I ended up watching Denise until midnight, then stayed up until 4 a.m. studying. I barely passed that exam. Despite all this, I managed to put myself through nursing school. I worked multiple jobs, took out loans, and somehow made it work. I became a pediatric nurse, found a job I loved, and built a life for myself. But somehow that was never enough for them. Every family gathering became an interrogation about why I was wasting time on a career when I could be raising a family. The babysitting demands only increased as Denise got older. Janice would regularly call me during my hospital shifts, expecting me to leave work to pick Denise up from school if she had a more important commitment. My parents always backed her up, saying things like, "Your sister has real responsibilities," or "It's just a job, family comes first." They never seemed to understand that as a nurse, I couldn't just abandon my patients whenever Janice wanted me to. The situation reached its breaking point about 6 months ago. My dad called me, saying they needed to have a family discussion about something important. I assumed it was another request for help with Denise, probably because Janice had started a new job, but what they had in mind was far more extreme than anything I'd imagined. When I arrived at their house, they sat me down in the living room. My dad, Mom, and Janice were all there, with Janice wearing that familiar smirk that always appeared when she knew she was about to get her way. My dad cleared his throat and said, "We've decided that it would be best for you to quit your job and come back to live with Janice to help take care of Denise full time." I actually laughed, thinking it was some kind of joke. But then my mom jumped in, her voice carrying that serious tone I'd grown to dread. "You're the one with the flexibility, honey," she said, as if my career meant nothing. "You don't have a family of your own yet, and Denise needs stability. Janice has so much on her plate, and we're getting ready to move to Florida." They had been planning this retirement move for years, but apparently their golden child needed more support than their retirement dreams. I sat there, waiting for someone to acknowledge how absurd this request was. But they continued explaining their perfect plan as if it was the most natural thing in the world. They'd saved their whole lives to retire in Florida, and it wasn't fair to them to have to delay that. Meanwhile, Janice just sat there with that self-satisfied expression, not contributing anything to the conversation but clearly expecting me to fall in line as usual. The more they talked, the more I realized how little they valued me or my choices. They spoke about my career as if it was just a hobby I could easily set aside, completely dismissing the years of hard work and dedication it had taken to become a pediatric nurse. They talked about my time as if it belonged to them, as if I had no right to make decisions about my own life. I finally found my voice and told them firmly and clearly that this wasn't going to happen. I explained that I had a career I'd worked hard for, one that allowed me to help sick children and their families. I wasn't about to give that up to become an unpaid, full-time nanny just because they felt entitled to my time and effort. My dad's face turned that familiar shade of red I'd seen so many times when I didn't immediately agree with his plans. "You're being selfish," he spat out. "Denise needs family right now, and this is your chance to be there for her." The irony of calling me selfish while asking me to give up everything for their convenience seemed completely lost on him. My mom, always ready to pile on the guilt, jumped in with, "You owe it to us, we've always been there for you." That was what finally made me snap. I reminded her, perhaps more sharply than I intended, that I'd been paying my own way since I was 18. They hadn't helped me with college tuition, rent, or really anything substantial. All my achievements had been despite their lack of support, not because of it. But my mom just brushed off my words with a wave of her hand, saying, "Janice's situation is different. She's a single mom, and you have to understand that it's not the same." It was the same argument they'd been using for years to justify their blatant favoritism, their endless demands on my time and energy. I finally stood up and said, with all the certainty I could muster, "I'm not quitting my job and I'm not moving back. If Janice needs a babysitter, she can hire one. It's not my responsibility." The silence that followed was deafening. That's when they showed their true colors. My mom's face hardened as she said, "If you walk away from this, don't expect us to be there for you when you need it. Don't expect anything from us." It was a threat they'd used before, but this time felt different. This time they were really drawing a line in the sand. They basically told me that if I wasn't willing to sacrifice my entire life for the family, I'd be on my own for good. I looked at each of them, my father's angry face, my mother's disapproving frown, Janice's smug expression, and realized that I'd rather be on my own than continue to be manipulated and blackmailed into giving up my life. Janice just rolled her eyes dramatically, as if I was being unreasonable for not wanting to become her personal, unpaid servant. She'd always been good at playing the victim, and this situation was no different. To her, my refusal to give up my life for her convenience was just another example of me being difficult. I left their house that day feeling a mix of frustration, anger, and oddly enough, relief. To be honest, after the initial hurt wore off, I found myself feeling lighter than I had in years. I assumed walking out that door would be the end of the drama. Instead, it turned out to be just the opening act. Update 1. Hey everyone, I really appreciate all the support and advice you've shared. It's hard to believe it's already been a week since I walked out. I thought the silent treatment from my family would last forever, but everything changed a few weeks ago when I got an unexpected call from my dad. The moment I saw his name flash across my phone screen, I knew something was different. "Janice is in trouble," he said, his voice cracking with what I now know was manufactured emotion. "She lost her job, she can't make rent, and she's going to get evicted. We need you to come back and help." The way he presented it made it sound like an emergency, a crisis that only I could solve. My initial reaction was firm. "I told you before, I'm not doing that." But my dad wasn't taking no for an answer. He launched into a carefully crafted guilt trip, accusing me of being vindictive, of punishing them for what he called making a mistake. The real knife twist came when he said I was letting my niece suffer because of a grudge. I'm ashamed to admit it, but their manipulation almost worked. The thought of Denise potentially being homeless or struggling hit me hard. Despite everything that had happened, I still loved my niece. I even started making plans to take her in temporarily, figuring I could convert my home office into a bedroom for her. I reached out to my apartment manager about adding her to my lease and contacted a local school about enrollment requirements. But then came the revelation that changed everything. One of my friends who works at the same company as Janice sent me a text with a photo attached. "Thought you should see this," she wrote. The picture showed Janice at the high-end mall downtown carrying multiple shopping bags from luxury stores. The timestamp showed it was taken that very morning when she was supposedly too broke to pay rent. My phone buzzed again as my friend sent more details. Not only had Janice not lost her job, but she'd actually received a promotion 2 weeks earlier. The whole story about being in financial trouble was a complete fabrication. I felt sick to my stomach as I realized how close I'd come to falling for their manipulation again. But the deception went even deeper. Through mutual friends, I learned that Janice had recently started dating a wealthy businessman, someone she'd met at a charity gala. She'd been trying to cultivate an image of sophistication and availability, which apparently meant she needed more free time for fancy dates and social events. That's where I was supposed to come in. The reliable sister who would drop everything to watch Denise while Janice pursued her romantic interests. The more I dug, the more lies I uncovered. When my dad had mentioned Janice's job troubles, he wasn't talking about her actual career, he was referring to her efforts to secure a wealthy husband. My parents had fully bought into Janice's plan, seeing it as her ticket to financial security. And once again, I was expected to sacrifice my own life to facilitate my sister's schemes. My mom called next, her voice dripping with artificial sweeteners. She'd always been good at this part. She even dangled what she thought was an irresistible carrot. They'd help me get a place of my own if I came back to be with family for a while. I almost laughed at the transparency of it all. They didn't even want me to live with Janice, they just wanted me close enough to be their on-call babysitter. The arrangement would have left me technically independent but practically tethered to their demands. I could see right through their plan. They'd help with the down payment or first month's rent, then hold it over my head forever as another tool for manipulation. "I'm not interested," I told her firmly. That's when her sweet facade cracked, revealing the familiar manipulation underneath. "Well, if anything happens to Denise, that'll be on you," she snapped, wielding my niece's welfare like a weapon. I took a deep breath before responding. "I love Denise, but I'm not her mother. That's Janice's job, not mine." The silence on the other end of the line told me my mother hadn't expected such a direct response. This wasn't even their first attempt at emotional manipulation. Over the years, they'd developed quite a repertoire of guilt trips and emotional blackmail. Every holiday season brought a fresh round of demands disguised as family obligations. My mom would call it bonding time, but in reality, it was just her way of ensuring I did all the work while Janice got to relax and socialize. The pattern was always the same. They'd make plans assuming my participation, then act shocked and hurt when I tried to establish any boundaries. My mom would pull out her favorite lines. "Denise's been looking forward to this, or you can't just leave us hanging like that." One particularly memorable holiday, she even issued an ultimatum. "If you don't want to be part of this family, maybe you shouldn't come at all." After I refused their demand to become their live-in nanny, my mom took her manipulation to new heights. She started leaving calculated voicemails. "Denise keeps asking why her aunt doesn't love her anymore." The lowest point was when she orchestrated a FaceTime call with Denise, coaching my niece from just off-screen. "Ask Annie why she doesn't want to see you." It was a new low, using a child as a tool for emotional manipulation. That's when I made the decision to skip family holidays altogether. I spent that Christmas with friends instead, enjoying what turned out to be one of the best holidays of my life. No guilt, no demands, just genuine warmth and celebration. My mom was furious, of course, calling me selfish and accusing me of abandoning my family. But for the first time, I didn't let her words affect me. The unraveling of their latest deception has only reinforced my decision to maintain strong boundaries. I've learned that my family's definition of emergency usually translates to "Janice wants something." Their version of helping family means sacrificing my own well-being for Janice's convenience. And their idea of being there for Denise really means enabling Janice's irresponsible behavior while using my niece as an emotional hostage. After the failed attempt to make me their live-in nanny, they started spreading their version of events throughout the extended family. My dad would tell people, "We never asked her to quit her job, we just wanted her to help a little." It was a masterful bit of revisionist history, conveniently omitting their actual demands and threats. That's when I started documenting everything, every call, every text, every manipulation attempt. When relatives reached out, concerned about the family rift, I showed them the evidence. Years of unreasonable demands, financial exploitation, and emotional manipulation. Some actually listened, and a few even apologized for accepting my parents' version of events without question. Janice's financial manipulation has been equally transparent. She'd regularly come to me crying about bills, rent, or Denise's school supplies. I used to help, believing she was genuinely struggling. Then I discovered she was using my money to fund her lifestyle, designer clothes, the latest gadgets, and luxury items, while claiming poverty to keep the assistance flowing. After I refused, Janice spread stories about my supposed stinginess, painting herself as the struggling single mom and me as the heartless sister who refused to help. When she started telling family friends that she might end up homeless because of my lack of support, I decided to set the record straight. I pulled out my phone and showed them the evidence, years of receipts for rent payments, school supplies, and grocery money I'd provided. I explained how Janice consistently chose luxury purchases over her daughter's needs, and how my help had enabled her irresponsible behavior rather than solving any real problems. The truth is, I do love my niece and I worry about the lessons she's learning from all this. But I've realized that the best thing I can do for her is to model healthy boundaries and self-respect, even when it's difficult. Maybe someday she'll understand that my refusal to enable her mother's behavior wasn't about a lack of love, but rather about having enough respect for myself and for her to stand up against manipulation and lies. Update 2. The peace lasted for several months until my dad called again. His voice carried a desperation I'd never heard before, or at least what he wanted me to believe was desperation. He launched into a story about Janice being evicted, unable to find work with nowhere to go. The manipulation was obvious. "Think of Denise," he pleaded. "She needs her aunt right now. She doesn't deserve to suffer because of this." I took a deep breath before responding. I did think of Denise. That's exactly why I said no to being dragged into this mess in the first place. You made it crystal clear that family isn't a two-way street here. My father's frustration mounted as his usual tactics failed to work. Finally, he snapped, letting his true feelings show. "One day you'll realize how selfish you've been. You're punishing us for a mistake, and you're letting a little girl suffer because of it." My response was calm but firm. "No, I'm letting you deal with the consequences of your choices. You chose to cut me off when I didn't fall in line, remember?" When that didn't work, he switched tactics, offering forgiveness if I'd just come back and be part of the family again. The audacity of him offering to forgive me after everything they'd done was the last straw. "I'm not interested in your version of family," I told him, "where I'm only valuable as long as I do what you want." I hung up and immediately blocked his number, adding it to the growing list of blocked contacts that included my mother and Janice. The silence that followed has been surprisingly peaceful. For the first time in my adult life, I feel truly free. There are no more guilt trips hanging over my head, no passive-aggressive comments to deflect, no constant demands on my time and energy. I'm finally building a life that centers around my own goals and happiness, rather than serving as someone else's safety net or backup plan. The only connection I've maintained is with Denise, though I keep it carefully separated from the rest of the family. Through a trusted mutual friend, one who never participated in my mother's surveillance scheme, I arrange occasional meetings with my niece. These quiet moments together are precious, allowing me to maintain our aunt-niece bond without the toxic influence of the rest of the family. I make sure Denise knows she can always count on me, that I'm here if she needs support or guidance. But I keep these visits private, away from Janice and my parents' knowledge. I want her to grow up knowing she has someone in her corner who loves her unconditionally, without the manipulation and control that characterizes our family's dynamics. I've accepted that my relationship with my parents and Janice might never heal, and I'm at peace with that reality. Years of trying to earn their approval, of attempting to prove my worth beyond what I could do for them, have taught me that they're not interested in who I am, only in what I can provide. If they can't respect me or my choices, they don't deserve a place in my life. Standing up to them has been challenging, but it's also been incredibly liberating. I've learned that family doesn't mean sacrificing your own well-being, and blood ties don't grant anyone the right to control your life. I've found strength in maintaining my boundaries and prioritizing my needs. For the first time, I'm living life on my own terms. If they ever decide to see me as a person worthy of respect rather than just a resource to be exploited, perhaps reconciliation might be possible. But until then, I'm done with their games. I'm done being manipulated, done being surveilled, and done being made to feel guilty for choosing my own path. My life is my own now, and I intend to keep it that way.